Melanie, and this is the Amber Hagerman cold case. Who is Amber Hagerman? Amber was born on November 25th, 1986, in Arlington, Texas. Richard Hagerman and Donna Williams are her parents, and she has a younger brother named Ricky. Amber was an innocent, sweet little girl who loved her family very much. She was a Girl Scout who loved riding Barbies and her pink bike. So, what happened? On January 13, 1996, Amber Hagerman was 9 years old and was outside riding her bike in the parking lot of an abandoned grocery store with her little younger brother Ricky. He went back home while Amber never showed up. She got abducted by a man in a black pickup truck, where a witness claims that Amber screamed and fought the man while he forced her into the car. 4 days later, a dog walker discovered her body in a creek about 4 miles from where she was abducted. The Criminal Act. The manner of Amber's death was ruled a homicide. She died from severe laceration wounds to her throat. The autopsy findings indicated she was kept alive for roughly 2 days before being murdered. She was found naked with one sock on, and she did not get raped, but got assaulted many times. Locations. So Amber and her younger brother rode their bikes to the parking lot of an abandoned Winn-Dixie less than 2 blocks away from their grandparents' home. The parking lot was surrounded by residential homes on one side and business buildings, including a laundromat, on the other. After she disappeared, her body reappeared by the Forest Hills apartment in Arlington, Texas. The building was only a few miles from the abduction site and 3.2 miles away from the grandparents' home. Behind the building, the body of Amber was submerged in a creek. The previous day, there was a massive thunderstorm that swelled the small creek. The dump site was not at the scene, but Amber was killed elsewhere. That means that she was probably dumped upstream and her body slowly washed up nearby where she was found. So, who was involved in the case? Amber Hagerman, the victim of the crime. She was 9 years old when she died in 1996. Donna Whitson and Richard Hagerman, the parents of Amber Hagerman and Ricky Hagerman. Glenda and Jimmy Whitson, Amber and Ricky's grandparents. Amber was at their house before she went missing. Ricky Hagerman, Amber's little brother, he was 5 years old in 1996 and was with Amber before she disappeared. And Jim Kivel was the eyewitness to the abduction. He was 76 years old at the time of the crime. The elements of the case. The Amber Hagerman case involved criminal acts of the kidnapping and murder, capital homicide under Texas law. There is also visible intent of harm and forcibly taking the child. The homicide element involves the intentional causing of death, leading the whole crime into a murder. Physical evidence has shown that a stranger caused harm and removed a victim from a public location. This falls under it being unlawful restraint and abduction. This case reflects to it being a violent felony involving a minor and classified kidnapping and homicide. This case involves concurrence and causation, proving that the homicide was criminal instead of being accidental. The nature of the case shows predatory intentions against a vulnerable child victim. Theories. One common assumption is that the crime may have been sexually motivated, since most child abductors are known for that. Investigators have also considered the suspect may have also committed other similar crimes or behaviors before Amber that could possibly put them under a serial offender pattern. Another theory followed by the offender was that maybe they were a local resident that was very familiar with the area Amber lived in, since her body ended up in a nearby creek. Limitations. There was a witness who saw the abduction. There was still missing information about it. The suspect's description was too vague to identify a specific individual. Human memory is not very reliable when they are under stress, which limits eyewitnesses' testimony. There was also forensic technology that was not as advanced or widely used as it is today. There was less ability to recover and analyze evidence. There were also fewer tools to link the suspect to the crime. There was also the creation of the Amber Alert system. At the time of the crime, there was no rapid public alert system that could help find Amber. There was no immediate way to notify the locals out in public in time to find her. Potential charges. One is capital murder, which is killing a child during a kidnapping, which becomes capital murder in the state of Texas. There was also aggravated kidnapping. The initial abduction, there was unlawful restraints, use of force, and threat, and the intent to harm. And this one is if forensics had specific evidence that could lead the case being sexually motivated, this would be a potential charge, which is sexual assault. But there was abuse of a corpse, where the evidence from this case showed that the human remains of Amber were improperly handled and hurt. Potential defenses. The case relied heavily on eyewitness descriptions. There are defense attorneys that could always argue that the suspect was identified wrong. And the eyewitness testimony, especially in high stress situations, can always be unreliable. And there was also sufficient evidence. There was the lack of surveillance footage and more amounts of evidence that lead to this case being very vague. When there's a defense attorney, they can argue that the prosecution cannot meet proof, especially if the case relies on circumstantial evidence than DNA, fingerprints, or a confession. Why is it a cold case? The abduction and murder of Amber Hagerman is still considered a cold case because, due to thousands of decades of investigating the case, police have never been able to identify or charge a suspect, even though there was a witness and they saw a man. The description was very limited and there was no clear license plate number obtained. These are my references, and thank you for listening to this. And I hope it recorded because I've recorded so many times, and hopefully it works. So, thank you.